Hello, Bengals fans. I'm Matt Minnick, cracking open a Gansett because it's probably going to be that kind of night.
Right there with you, man.
Hey, all right, I like it. So, we are here for the pregame show. I mean, this is one circled on the calendars. Exciting matchup. Hoping late in the season. Burrow nice and developed, that Monday night football against the Steelers. Like this is definitely one to circle and say, hey, maybe this is one where they can do something, they can make a statement. No Burrow and no wins since Burrow's been gone. Unfortunately things were looking up. Things were looking pretty good. They beat the Titans, came back. Obviously, things did not go well against the Steelers the first time around. But then there was that string of games that they definitely could have won without Joe Burrow and definitely should have won with Joe Burrow. And nothing to show for it. But we were just saying that we're going to try not to be negative because it's Monday Night Football, and we want to we're going to stay up. We're going to stay up. We're gonna deal with it and try and enjoy the game. Hopefully, have an enjoyable game, but definitely a lot of negatives going into this one for the Bengals. Again, Matt Minnick with John Sheeran. We'll have Anthony Cosenza join us a little bit later. This is the Cincy Jungle pregame tailgate show brought to you by our good friends over at Narragansett. And we're cracking into the Gansets at a socially acceptable hour instead of lunchtime on a Sunday like normal.
Here 2020, man. It's all socially acceptable.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's weekend, right? We're good. All right. So let's see what we got coming in here. Beat the Steelers. This is going to be embarrassing to watch. That's definitely a possibility.
Hey, shout out Blake Jewell, Nick Superling. Both guys have podcasts about the Bengals. Definitely check them out. Follow them on Twitter. Nice to see you guys.
Blake too?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, this, if your one game is based on the content that was out there for you, there's a lot of great Bengals stuff out there. So there really is. So yeah, definitely check that out. Hey Matt, what was your eureka moment? I tweeted about this earlier today.
Oh yeah.
So and I ended up posting it later because it was like several tweets. So this is what I realized. It's like we've been beaten down so much as Bengals fans. There was the entire 1990s. Some good offense occasionally and not much else. And then Marvin came along and it was like things got better. Things changed. And they were generally competitive under Marvin. They went to the playoffs. There were 2 years when I think you can legitimately say they were Super Bowl contenders. And in both those years, they lost the quarterback, Carson Palmer, and against the Steelers in the playoffs, and obviously Dalton in 2015. I mean, like those were really good teams that had a shot, had a real shot. So we've been beaten down so much, and like I haven't understood because I'm a pretty positive person, all right, and it's not easy. In this day and age and in this fan base, but I'm a pretty positive person, and look, I get why people don't like Zach Taylor. I get the frustration with Zach Taylor because they're not playing well. But I never understood why that extended to hating his optimism. Because, look, what do you want the coach to come out and be like, wow, we suck. We're not going to win a game this year. Like, what's he supposed to do? Like he's not going to fire himself, and come out and saying the O-line is awful isn't going to make the O-line any better. Like that's what's going to cause you locker room issues. That's when you're going to lose the team. And you can see a lot of the famous coach flip outs of all time. They are who we thought they were. And, playoffs, like a lot of those things. Like if you think about them, they were publicly calling out the players, and those guys never last. You know what I mean? So Like that's a bad thing if you're doing that. So it's always like really confused me why specifically like that seems to bother people. And reading Ben Baby's piece today and then reading the comments, people responding to it, like it was just my moment. It was like, oh, that's it. Like we've just been so beaten down that we can't feel good. Like we can't have positive energy um, in this fan base. So like because we don't believe it, there's like a contempt for Zach Taylor's optimism about the future. And like, look, rightfully so, we don't believe it. I'm not, trying to say we're all terribly negative people, but yeah, 4.5 games in 2 years. I get it, but I think it's like it's like it's like the scene in Endgame. You know, don't don't give me hope. Like we just like we hate the optimism because we've been there before and we've lost and we've been hurt. So that was my eureka moment that I finally realized why people hate that. And it's just because we've been beaten down so much that we can't believe it. I you know I don't know that Zach Taylor's coaching career's been gone through this sort of thing, but I part of my positive energy is because I have coached bad football teams, and a year or two later, those were conference championship football teams with some of the same guys on the roster. So like I've seen very bad turn into good. Like
Right.
it is possible. Can this guy do it? Can this team do it? I don't know, but I'm just saying like I think that's a lot of my takes are like I'm always thinking about things in terms of, all right, well, this is the situation, so how do we overcome it? Um, so that's why I think that's why it's foreign to me, but I get it now. I understand it.
Yeah, I mean, because if Zach isn't positive about the team, then literally no one else will be. Like
Right?
no one is. They're not short on haters and rightful critics because they stink and they have stunk for 2 years. If he's
Yeah.
the one that just like accepting that, then he's lost any and all job security at all possible. And it's not like he's never criticized the team, at least to some degree, and said that we need to do better in these areas because that's
Yeah.
definitely happened. It's not in a detrimental way. It's the fact that they don't seem to show any progress or apply those criticisms that own criticism to actually make any progress. So I definitely see where you're coming with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, yeah, we're sitting in a situation. You wonder if Burrow doesn't get hurt. Like, I mean, they should have won the last 3 games. They should. I mean, they could have won the last 4 games. But if Burrow doesn't get hurt, and now we're sitting there with 8 wins in 2 years, it's not really any different. You know what I mean? Because I like would we feel better because of those wins? Like because those weren't great wins. I think the Cowboys are playing better now, and I think the Dolphins are a pretty good team. But like I said, they were in those games without him. So I don't know. So how much better do we feel if he's around and they win those games? We feel better about tonight. I'll tell you, I'll tell you that much. It'll be a very different mood in this on this on this pregame show. Maybe you're thinking there's a chance against some of these good teams they're playing the last couple of weeks, but yeah, like how much does that change it?
I don't know, man, because I mean they didn't beat the Chargers with Burrow out there, and that wasn't even with Justin Herbert there. They tied against the Eagles when Carson Wentz was terrible. They blew a lead against the Colts. Like they've lost to teams that are not so great, even with Burrow out there. So it's not a guarantee that they win all those games, but they're definitely more competitive because the defense will actually give them a chance because they're going up against terrible offenses and backup quarterback in 2 cases. So I think the fact that they lost so badly to the Dolphins and the Cowboys, like we talked about this last week, like we expected that game to be close. And in all seriousness, it should have been a lot closer than it was. And the fact that they lost that ugly, I think it's damning towards Taylor and the rest of the staff in terms of preparing these guys and actually making it a more competitive game than what it actually ended up being. When you lose by 20 points to the Cowboys at home, it's nothing good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is like that game looked a lot worse than it was. Like the turnovers absolutely suck. Like that drives you crazy. And but like if Joe Mixon fumbles 3 times, or if your quarterback's throwing 3 picks, you feel worse about it than 3 fumbles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because when it's 3 different guys, it's like each one is kind of random. And there was 17 points off of that. And then even in like, despite that, like even with those 17 points, um, and by the way, we say 17 points, it's really 10 because the
Yeah.
Alex Erickson one, like they had to drive the field. Like they took them like 92 yards. Like those 7 points are on the defense. But still, but it's a swing, and they should have scored. They should have scored at least a field goal when they were down there. They should have scored at least a field goal twice when they fumbled. Down close enough. That they could have kicked a field goal at least. But still, if not for that holding call in the fourth quarter, they would have cut it to a 6-point game right there. Like it's insane how close the game still was at that point, and the defense was playing pretty well in the second half. Like they might have gotten a stop. Oh, we have a Zoe appearance. It's usually Max. Zoe's checking in the pod today. She likes to sit up here by my head sometimes. So
She is gorgeous.
she is. She's got the tiger stripes,
Mhm.
the Raiders coloring. Unfortunately, she's a big Latavius Murray fan. It was. She did not like it when he left Oakland. My wife's laughing at me right now, but but yeah, I mean, I don't know, but you just see those things. But again, you make a good point. Like I can say that game was closer than it looked, and we can look at the scores in the other games and say, wow, if you put Joe Burrow into that game, they should have won it. But at the same time, to your point, they were losing one-score games with Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way I kind of looked at the 2019 season too. Was, hey, you had AJ Green and Joe Burrow. Like maybe those one-score games could have
Right.
been something, and here we are still losing 1-score games.
I want to ask you a question though about like the Cowboys game because like I don't was the holding call, was that the drive that Allen got hurt?
Yes, and
Yeah.
I think they oh yeah, like they quit on Finley. Like they didn't even want to play
Right.
after that.
But that's my point. Like
That's
because
really disheartening night.
it seems so obvious that Allen just couldn't do anything. Like he couldn't throw the ball at all with what was going on. And and I'm asking you, like, do you think the Bengals even get that close to scoring position with Finley at quarterback if they took him out?
I mean, I don't think that guys play with him. I don't know if they hate him or if they just think he really sucks, and they're just like, ugh, all right, this thing's over. Like literally, like I mean, he got sacked. What did he get sacked like 2 or 3 times in like one drop? Like it was
He
ridiculous.
gets sacked like every 10 dropbacks, I think.
Yeah, and like I don't know that he did anything wrong there. I think the O line wasn't blocking, and there was definitely some poor effort from some receivers when he got into the game too. Doesn't feel like a coincidence, but because I mean, yeah, at that point, I think they had only scored another field goal, so it was like a 9-point game because the touchdown
Mhm.
was at the end. And again, like that's another thing about like that touchdown at the end. Like we love to point out when the Bengals one-score games are because of garbage time touchdowns, but that was like a true garbage time touch. Like that
Yeah.
didn't count. You know what I mean? Like that game was over. But I don't know. Yeah, that was quite frustrating, and it was very frustrating that I do a play of the week for the Cowboys,
Oh yeah.
blocking the boys' side too. So that was not a fun Monday for me. This was a fun Monday for me though, because the Cowboys actually played well yesterday, so I got to do a good play, and it wasn't against the Bengals, so that was nice.
Yeah.
Juju
Okay.
already danced in the logo. Whatever.
Honestly, like I don't I can't imagine like myself as a player like warming up and seeing that and like being annoyed. I'm honestly just cringing more than I am like upset about it. Like someone equated it to being like someone taking a shit on your front stoop, like totally equal things, right? No, like
No.
I don't. Like it does nothing, and I don't understand why it's a big
Who was
deal.
the guy that did like the cleaning the feet thing, like where he was like actually like kicking up the logo? Like last year, somebody did that. Like that's bad. Like I don't know, Like honestly, I just saw this one from the Bengals game, and Juju just looked like he was like just dancing at midfield. Like
That's all it is.
the Bengals clip didn't even. I wouldn't have even taken it personally. It's like no, whatever.
No, nobody cares. He's just doing it for his TikTok. Just let him be.
Right? And I mean, it's one of those things. It's just like it's like the Darius Phillips thing. 2 months ago or whatever, when he was like, don't neglect my talent or whatever he said,
Mhm.
and people were like, oh, he shouldn't be doing that on Twitter. It's just like that's what people do now, you know,
Right.
and you know, dancing on logos so you can post it online. That's just like something that they do now. Kind of weird that it's a Juju thing because wasn't that like a big wasn't that a big point of contention between Mike Tomlin and Antonio Brown that he was live tweeting something from the locker room or something?
Yeah, I think so. I think
So you
someone else
Tomlin would be like, nope, I'm on.
maybe I think someone else is like posting it on his account, so he
Hmm.
has like just somebody like following him with the camera. Um, yeah, but I don't know if it like goes as far as like during the game, or something like that.
All right, let's not target Roethlisberger because I mean, do you want to hurt him and then he retires and all of a sudden they actually have cap space? I don't know that. Let the old guy that they can't throw deep stay there as long and costs a lot of money. Stay there as long as possible. Sewell goes to the Jets. Let's talk about this.
Yes, let's talk about it.
I don't get this. Okay, so on Sunday morning there were two teams that were going to pick in front of the Bengals, and on a Monday morning there were two teams that are going to pick in front of the Bengals. Uh, John, why does the order they go in matter?
I think someone brought up like the fact that
Or is it Fields not playing well? I mean, because I know that happened
well
recently.
that's another thing. I don't think I've only seen Justin Fields play like 6 times, and none of the times I saw a guy that was the franchise quarterback. But I mean, I haven't watched enough of him, and I think he's still produced really well enough to be in that conversation. But I think the argument that someone made is that the fact that the Jets still have like a young quarterback who had a lot of potential in Sam Darnold. That's like the only reason why they would pass on a guy like Fields or Zach Wilson for that matter from BYU and take the best player who's not a quarterback in Penei Sewell. But honestly, they're going to fire Gase. They're going to bring in a whole new staff. Like they're going to finish 1-15, and they just drafted a tackle last year at 1 overall to play the left tackle. Like I don't, it doesn't make sense. Like if they don't take a quarterback, like what exactly are they doing?
Yeah, I, I don't know. I mean, I would want to see who you, assuming they bring in a coach, I would want to see what your coach thought of Sam Darnold, but this pretty far into that whole thing. I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't give up on Sam Darnold's career by any stretch, but it's one of those things that you hope you're not picking there all the time. So you kind of got to do it when you get a chance. Um, but we'll see.
But like also
Thing about the Bengals, like here's something I don't get. Like I like Penne, and I just watched a bunch of film of other tackles, and there's two other guys who I like a lot, and there's two other guys who I think are probably first round picks. And if the Bengals got him in the second, I'd be happy. But I mean, it's the same sort of. It's a similar thing that they took Burrow the year before they took Jonah. Jonah's last year for Jonah, that was a college injury. That was an old injury. I get that he's hurt now. I don't think that he's hurt now is that big of a deal. Like if they were in playoff contention, he'd come back.
mhm.
It was the way it sounded. That he could be coming back if the season was a little bit longer. Look, I get that there are two tackles, but like a lot, I've seen a lot of like negative Jonah chatter, and I've seen, well, you move Jonah to right tackle, like that's the default. Like you got to move Jonah because you're going to bring in. Like I don't know. I mean, are we giving up on Jonah too fast? Are we? Is it fair to be concerned about injuries? Yeah, what are your thoughts on Jonah and the likelihood of taking a tackle that high when you have Jonah that high?
For essentially a rookie left tackle, Jonah Williams was pretty damn good this season. And I know people had extremely high expectations, but that's just not the case for first year offensive linemen. They just rarely play at a high level. Like what Tristan Wirfs and what Michael Onamunu, I think is his last name, for the Patriots, what they're doing as rookies is outstanding, and it's deserving of all the credit because that rarely happens. We knew the limitations that Jonah Williams had, and I think those limitations have kind of creeped into his NFL career, but there are limitations that he can work with and he can improve upon. What we saw this year, aside from the injuries, because that's a whole other thing, it's good enough to be a starting caliber left tackle in the NFL. And I don't think you give up on that just because you have another left tackle coming in. But it comes back to the positional difference to me. Like you need a really good quarterback to survive in the NFL, and the downgrade from the first quarterback to the second quarterback can sometimes be drastic. And maybe that's the case for this year, like we thought it was last year. You don't need elite offensive tackles. Like it would be nice to get a Penei Sewell, obviously, and I think if the Bengals had the chance to draft him, they will probably still draft him regardless of what they do in free agency. It's not the end of the world if you don't get the best offensive tackle, because the drop off between the first and the second, even if it's drastic, it's not going to be a detriment to your team. You just need guys who can survive and be competent and be good. And the guys that you were referring to without saying their names, there's plenty of good offensive tackles in this draft. And it's not me saying that if the Bengals don't get Sewell, like Sewell was never that good to begin with. He's still really, really good and he's deserving of the hype. But if they don't get him, it's not the same as missing out on the top quarterback.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. And I mean, yeah, it'd be really cool. I mean, if Penny's everything that he's built to be, if he ends up being that, like that'd be awesome, and regardless of where you put Jonah, like to have that guy, I get it, but yeah, I just feel like I don't get me wrong, I have no problem with taking Penny or any other tackle, even if they fall back or trade back in the top 10 or whatever. It's just like I don't know. I feel like we got off of that too fast, but I don't know. What do you think? So if Penny is gone, so to Mike's question here, if it ends up being Trevor Lawrence and Penny going 1 and 2, I mean, look, I haven't really looked at the edge class. I think edge is the other position you would look at that position to hopefully when you're trying to get an elite guy. Is that a little rich for Jamar Chase? Do you think about that? I've heard people say Pitts. I definitely think number 3 overall is a reach for a tight end. I don't know. Do you think they trade back? What do you think you do at that point?
Well, honestly, like if you're at this high in the draft order and you aren't looking for a quarterback, you should always be thinking about trading back, because the Bengals have so many needs and they can't just go into the draft with just 8 draft picks, which I think was what they're going to have with the Carlos Dunlap trade. Like it would be great if they ended up acquiring a couple of really high picks, even if there was like a blue chip prospect available like Sewell, they should still be considering trading back. It should always be in the consideration. But if you're like that on draft day and you go down the list like who's available and no one really stands out to you as a guy that like they have to get, then yeah, trading back is probably in their best interest, because I mean, Jamar Chase would improve the team, Kyle Pitts would improve the team, Rousseau from Miami would improve the team. But if there's nobody that you're saying we have to get this guy with a top 5 pick, always entertain the options, because those other picks, they will lead you to so much more value than the guy that you end up picking.
Yeah, I mean, the quarterback thing makes it really interesting too, because now if somebody does really like Fields, it only takes one person. It only takes
Right.
one. Mahomes was not a big name, like we were talking about him, but guess what? Everybody loved Trubisky. Like that was like the talk. Maybe not like us internet guys. There were plenty of us internet guys that preferred Mahomes and Watson, but like the NFL guys and the guys on ESPN were talking about Trubisky, and all it took was one NFL guy to really want Watson to move up and get him. All it took was one NFL guy to really want Mahomes to go up and get him, and all it takes is one guy to like Wilson or Fields, and now the Bengals are in that spot, where it's almost a more valuable pick at that point. If Penny is the Myles Garrett of this draft, he's the no-brainer non-quarterback guy, and Trevor's obviously Trevor. Like 3's where it gets interesting. 3's where
Right.
happen. And if somebody is really excited about moving up for that quarterback, like you're sitting right there. Maybe you're picking up a first next year. You might have to move because like the Texans were not drafting that high. The Chiefs were a playoff team. I mean, it's like I'm trying to think of who would be in that type of position and be aggressive like that. But
Niners, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe the Niners. I mean, probably wouldn't be that far of a fall.
Oh yeah, because they're not going to the playoffs, right?
But yeah, I mean, like it brings us some interesting ideas there. Like that it could get really really fun at that point. So I mean, I don't know. It almost makes it better if Penny's gone, because if Penny's there, you have to take him. But if he's gone, it almost makes it more interesting. Like, all right, what can we do with this thing now? How can we make this work? Because you're right. Like there are a number of needs, and multiple picks over multiple years. That goes along. I mean, that's what that's what the Dolphins did. That's what some other teams have done. That they've been able to have some success with. The other thing too, by the way, about Jonah, like we're assuming there's going to be some changes on the staff, and I gotta think Turner's the first thing, right? I mean, that's got to be the first one that falls. Like if one thing changes between the Burrow injury and the absolute lack of a running game this year, like Turner's got to be the first one out the door, right? So that's the thing. Like Jonah Williams, and now you bring in a new line coach. What does that do for you? Does that take another step? I mean, Duke Manyweather like came out and said, who works at Penny, came out and said, if the Bengals draft Penny, I hope they have a new position coach.
Right.
So that would, I mean, potentially, something that could help Jonah to take the next step as well.
Duke Manyweather, by the way, like this should have been the first sign that Jim Turner was bad news. In case you didn't already know what his past was in Miami, he was working with Eric McCoy, who was a Texas A&M guy who came out in the 2019 class, and essentially, like Manyweather said, I was working with a guy, which was McCoy, and his position coach got really mad at him for leaving for the NFL, while the same position coach left for the NFL that same year, and it was referring to Jim Turner. So those two have had beef for at least 2 years, and it should have been the first time that Jim Turner probably wasn't the nicest guy or the greatest coach in the world. But dude, like
some other times that he wasn't the nicest guy.
Yeah. Like honestly, the things that we're hearing, right? Like at least from the Athletic guys and Dana Jr. and Morrison, like they're saying that Anarumo is gonna be the fall guy, which is also likely to happen if Zach stays around. And it might not be Turner just because of how close he is to Taylor. Like it makes all the sense in the world for the front office to step in and say, you need a new offensive line coach because this guy that you brought in, he's just not it. It makes all this, but it also makes sense that if they decide to keep Taylor for one more year, that Taylor would still have the power to keep his family member in an offensive line coach. So for some reason, it doesn't seem as much of a slam dunk as it should be, where it is with Anarumo, I guess, in comparison. But yeah, if Taylor's gone, then Turner's definitely first to go.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really think Taylor's back, but I don't know. I would think that would be non-negotiable, because that's the thing too. Is it's like, I mean, this hurts me. This hurts me to my core as a defensive coordinator, but. Is the O-line coach more important in today's NFL than the defensive coordinator?
It probably is.
Especially when you have a first overall pick quarterback. I mean, I don't know. Like, put aside what each has done individually. Like, I feel like if you're Duke or Katie or whoever, and you want to make a push for one, and you're going to put your foot down on one thing. It's like one thing you're not going to back off on. I got to feel like it's the O-line coach.
Yeah. because his whole thing used to be he would set up the run game. He would be the run game coordinator. And while it's still his responsibility, his first priority now is to make sure his pass protection is fine, so his quarterback stays alive. Like
You know,
it could,
you bring up an interesting point there, and I was thinking about this the other day. So the Bengals have a really weird setup, right? There's no GM, right? And because there's no GM, we know Duke evaluates talent. We know the coaches evaluate talent. We know
mhm,
Katie and Mike are involved with money. We don't really know who does what or who makes the final decisions on things.
it's true.
Um, you've got Zach Taylor, who's probably calling the plays, and you get Callahan, who's the offensive coordinator. But I keep being told that people didn't want to take a job with Zach Taylor, but Callahan did it. And Callahan's a name, and not just because of his dad, but Callahan's a bit of a name. He probably didn't take it if he doesn't have some pretty strong input. Like, I think there's probably like an Eagles type of situation from a few years ago. Callahan might be in charge of third downs or red zone or something, but we don't know. Like, we can complain all we want about Zach's play calling and say Callahan should be calling the plays, but we really don't know right now. Even when Zach's questioned on it, he says, "I think what we're doing works all right." He didn't say, he doesn't say
Right.
what Callahan's doing. So we don't really know. The one thing we know is that the shitty run game is Jim Turner. That's the only thing we really know. And, like it's something that's terrible, and we can point a finger at it. Like because it's funny because it's because they came out, and when they were criticized last year, they said, well, Jim Turner helped, we brought him in to design the run game, and he fixed the run game last year. And then we obviously know that didn't carry over into this year. So, like, to me, like, as fans, like, that should be the number one thing because we actually know what he does. Like,
Right.
I don't really, you can't tell me what Callahan really does as an offensive coordinator whose head coach calls the plays. He's got to be doing more than what we know, which is nothing. Like, he's got to be involved, really heavily in some kind of game planning, maybe calling some plays at some point, but we don't know. Even Anarumo, like they brought in Al Golden, who's
Hmm.
apparently doing blitz packages and third downs. Like, who's really controlling that thing now? Like, we haven't and by the way, some of the worst aspects of the defense, apparently Al Golden's in charge of. But one thing we know is the run game that sucks is Jim Turner.
No, it's just everything's delegated out by different people because no one really has command. No one really has is capable of handling like the normal duties. Honestly, like it's a staff that is obviously one of the most incompetent in the league right now, and it's mainly filled by guys who were just second, third, fourth choices by everyone else, and
Yeah.
it's all come together, and no one can really handle their what should be their normal jobs, so everything's kind of delegated out and more sectioned off, and you get this mess because no one really has any idea what they're doing, I guess, and they don't really have the personnel to do it either.
You can do it, and I'm fine with it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, is it because you're doing it because people can handle things? Which, like, I was just talking to Jake Lisco about this earlier. Like, I thought when they brought in Al Golden, I was like, that's a weird hire. And like right away in the back of my head, I was like, are they going to replace Lou with him midseason? Because it was just like it was just too weird to be the linebackers coach, and now we know he's doing more than just being the linebackers coach.
Yeah.
And actually brings up another interesting point. So this was weeks ago. I was in a conversation on Twitter with Andre Parada, and I think Jake was in there too, actually. But like the idea was that Zach Taylor can't attract assistants. But here's my thing. I think it's a completely different job right now than it was when he took the job. And it's Joe Burrow. And I don't care if you're the defensive coordinator or the offensive line coach, like, or whatever. To me, the fact that Joe Burrow is there, even though you got 4.5 win Zach Taylor there, like, to me, you look at it just like we look at everything from the outside and say, hey, if there's a quarterback, they get a chance. I think you look at that and you're like, hey, they got a quarterback. I'm a defensive, geez, I lost the guy's name. I'm the guy. whatever. I'm the safeties coach from the Rams, whatever his name was. You know, all of a
Aubrey
sudden I get
Pleasant.
this job, and I say, hey, they got a quarterback. If I get that defense right, they're going to the playoffs, and I'm getting a job. I'm gonna be a head coach.
It's entirely possible. 619 Bengals fan Garcia. Turner never played O-line. Turner was a Marine. You put some respect on a Marine. He was a troop. And we always have to respect those people. No more Jim Turner slander for you.
Wait, was that at me or was that you at him? You were the guy.
No, that was just I think that was just a general comment.
Yeah,
That's his best quality. He was a Marine, and he has the Marine mentality to get these guys wrong.
Can Erickson just QB tonight? I don't, man, the QB thing's gonna be interesting. And like people were talking about, like, oh well, maybe Hogan will get in. I don't know. Like, how much does Hogan know?
But like, if they hate Finley this much, do you think there is a slight chance that players are clamoring for Hogan? I don't know.
That's a good point. I don't know. Well, this has been a weird podcast, but
Weird times.
said we weren't going to be negative. I feel like I've been negative the whole time. I'm draining my own energy. But you know what? We're going to sit back. We're going to hope for the best. We're not going to expect the best, but we're going to hope for the best. And that's what it is.
Hoping for a sub 3 hour runtime.
He's not an offensive line coach. Yeah. You know, this brings up a good point. Surprised Anthony Munoz is an offensive line coach. Would like to have him. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe, some guys are interested in that stuff. Some guys aren't. I think it's very different than playing. I think some guys, you see a lot of times guys who play start coaching and then they might be good at it, but they're just like, no, I hate this. It's not the same thing. But
It's
people like say about Willie.
Exactly.
Like, Willie Anderson should be the offensive line coach. Here's the thing about Willie. Like, I'm sure he'd do a great job. I don't know if he wants the job.
He doesn't.
I haven't heard anything that him ever indicating he does. I think he loves doing what he does now, working with high school kids, working with younger kids. And it probably frees him up to be able to spend more time with his own family too than he would have as a coach. So, I mean, that's just one of those things. Like, yeah, that'd be great, but I don't, if he wants it, I'm on board, but I don't know that he does. I don't think that he does.
Like Willie's job is so much more fulfilling, and like you said, it's not as time consuming, and he fulfills the purpose that he wants to fulfill, and I think we should all respect that.
Yeah, absolutely. Lead line assistant. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Somebody actually in the comments is talking about it too. I mean, yeah, it'd be great, but I don't think he'd.
Yeah. If anyone's wondering,
I'm not a huge fan of the. It's weird. I'm a huge fan of Pete Carroll, but I'm not a huge fan of the Seattle defense. Because I think sometimes those guys lack a little bit of flexibility. But look, he's the guy that makes sense because that's the type of guy we wanted right away, was somebody with some head coaching experience that Zach could lean on a little bit. I think he leans on. They've said he has said that he leans on Darren quite a bit. Another indication, by the way, that Zach Taylor doesn't think he's getting fired, because he was like gushing over how great Darren Simmons was a couple weeks ago, and I don't know why you would do that about the only obvious person on staff to take your job if you were really threatened or worried about the future. So I think he's sticking around. We are, I think, about 8:15 or 8:25 kickoff.
Probably 8:25.
20. Okay, so we're a few minutes away. We haven't talked too much about this matchup, but I think we all know. I think we all know what's going on here. But any thoughts? Anything we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about?
I guess if the Jets can find a way, then so can this team. That's all I got.
That is a point. I mean, look, weeks ago, I mean, honestly, even with Brandon Allen, I might have been able to talk myself into it. Because honestly, I thought the defense played pretty well against the Steelers the first time. Just they couldn't keep it up, and they got put in bad situations by an Alex Erickson fumble and some other things that happened in that game. But that's what's really frustrating about this team is they show flashes where it's like, oh, they could have done that. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
But yeah. So even with him, like maybe I could talk myself into it, but man, I just don't think guys will play for Finley. Like it's beyond. It's not him even. It's not even like his ability. I don't think when he's out there, I think they won't play.
That's a problem for Zach Taylor because he might be coaching for his job tonight. We don't know. But also, if you guys are wondering where Anthony is, he apparently had a leak in his house and has been putting fires out all day. So, thoughts and prayers, Anthony.
Not fun. Not fun. Yeah, I'm. This is the way the season's going, right? You know, like you're
This is 2020.
I got a job last week, and now I'm quarantined because of that job.
Hey, let's go. It's the best news all night. That's the best news we will hear all night.
Right? But now I'm quarantined. I couldn't even get through a week. So 2020, we got about a week left. It's not Happy New Year this year. It's just New Year. It's just let's move on. You know what? It's we're on to 2021. That's what it is.
Couldn't have said it better.
Charger. We got a Charger fan all over the show. Aaron Martin must have checked us out week 1 and gotten hooked.
A fellow degenerate. What's up?
For coming out, Aaron. That's a surprise to see. All right. Well, looks like we're about ready to wrap up. I do want to say one thing though. Look, they're playing the Steelers tonight, and you're going to hear about this on the broadcast. Looks like they're just about ready for kickoff. But look, rivalries are one thing. I hate the Steelers too. They've had some players over the years who have been so awesome that you had to like them, even though they're Steelers. Troy Polamalu comes to mind. Mm-hmm. Another one, a big one for me, is Kevin Green. And I mean, it was awful news. 58 years old. He passed away today. For those of you one of the good things about football in the 90s was watching Kevin Green. Man, he was incredible. Also, on a personal note, as a young D3 defensive backs coach, I was trying to learn about the 3-4 defense because we were running it, and there's some things that I didn't like about it and some answers I wanted. I wrote a letter to every 3-4 coach I could find, and one of very few people that did anything in response to that was Kevin Green, who personally called me and talked to me for about an hour and answered all my questions. And again, I'm nobody. He had no idea who he was. I had no connection. I said a letter, blindly. And there are coaches out there and people in the NFL who, when you reach out to them, they won't do anything, or they'll give you sometimes it's negative. I had one guy that I wanted on the podcast, and he was going to charge me more than I make podcasting for a year to be on one episode. Kevin Green, man, just a football guy. Those are the real football guys, the guys that will talk to anybody, even a bum like me, about it. So just a great dude, man, and really, really sucked hearing that. So, and if you don't know, I mean, if you're too young, if you missed it, seriously, look up his football life, look up his highlights on YouTube. Dude was incredible, and I see the game's already going, but I wanted to make sure I got that in. So, yeah, him and Greg Lloyd, great point here for Duncan. So, on that bitter note, we'll go off and we'll catch another game. We'll be back next week. Hopefully a little bit more optimistic looking into that Texans game coming up on Sunday. So for Anthony, for John, and I'm Matt Minnick. We'll see you on Sunday.